Warning, this video will contain spoilers about Batman Arkham City. Just 2 years after the successful release of Arkham Asylum in 2009, Arkham City was welcomed by fans and critics alike with countless number of positive reviews across the board. Although the game launched with a few glitches and performance issues here and there, City was and is still widely regarded as a very enjoyable open world game despite its age. Arkham City did what many sequels struggle with today, bringing the parts of the original game that people enjoyed and dropping or improving the parts that they didn't. In this video, I will not only be reviewing the game, but trying to explain to you why I think that City is just better than Asylum. I didn't include this section of the review in my Arkham Asylum video, and that's because I didn't think the map was large enough to warrant it. But that's different in City, with the introduction of a sprawling Gotham with some amazing locations to explore. A city landscape works so much better with the grappling system of the Arkham series compared to a map such as the one featured in Arkham Asylum. It is better to be grappling around skyscrapers and cranes than it is to be on a small island with fewer and shorter buildings. The whole game takes place during a very cold winter, which is reflected by the constant snowfall in Gotham. I think the seasonal effect adds a lot to make you feel the cold, crime-ridden ambiance, which I think was the intended goal. Rocksteady did a really good job creating the illusion of a city in distress, with burning cars, roaming gangs of thugs throughout the city, and well-hidden additions like Riddler trophies and puzzles. The map also spaces out missions pretty well, which allow for further exploration of the map. The size difference alone between Asylum and City is mind-blowing. I don't have an exact number, but the map in City seems to be around 4 to 5 times larger, which is an amazing upgrade considering that this is only a 2-year gap between the games. Half of the Batman games is grappling and gliding around, so the addition of a city with towering skyscrapers really encourages you to use the aerial mechanics. I don't have much to say about characters returning from Asylum such as Batman or Joker. They all seem to be pretty consistent through the games. Some new characters in City include Catwoman, Two-Face, the Penguin, Mr. Freeze, Ra's al Ghul, Robin, and a few only found in side missions like the Mad Hatter and Deadshot. These new characters have been given just as much care and attention as the ones featured in Asylum that the transition between the games seems non-existent. I did have a few issues with some of the writing between Batman and Mr. Freeze. Their first interaction was when Batman saves Freeze from the Penguin, so they are on good terms. The next interaction between them is when Freeze denies Batman the antidote, so now they are on bad terms. And then the final interaction between them is positive, and it seems Batman immediately forgives him for pretty much almost killing him. I understand that the Joker kidnapped Freeze's wife, but instead of trying to devise a plan together, Freeze immediately betrays Batman. I just don't think that Batman could trust someone that quickly who betrayed him so recently. I think when written well, betrayals and double crossings can add a lot to a story, but when it is overplayed too much, the gravity of when it does happen isn't as massive. But that was just one of my very specific nitpicks with the writing. Other than that, the characters seem really well written and voice acted. Quick note, I will not be breaking down any section where he plays Catwoman, as it kinda just screws up the flow of the story and they aren't necessary to understand what's happening. 18 months after the events of Arkham Asylum, more trouble is brewing in Gotham. Mayor Quincy Sharp permits Dr. Hugo Strange to have a prominent role in the newly built Arkham City Detainment Center, which lies in the heart of Gotham. Bruce Wayne protests for the removal of the prison as it poses a threat to the surrounding area with the copious amounts of dangerous prisoners it holds. During a speech in front of Arkham City, multiple Tiger soldiers arrest Bruce Wayne and place him in the prison along with other political prisoners. Bruce wakes up face to face with Dr. Strange, who reveals to Bruce that he knows he is Batman. He also talks about Protocol 10 and that he can now finally go forward since Bruce is locked up. We don't really know what Protocol 10 is until the end of the story. While being escorted through the prison, Bruce meets journalist Jack Ryder and helps protect him against other attacking inmates. After beating them up, Bruce encounters the Penguin and some of his henchmen. After dealing with them, Bruce receives his Batsuit and you are finally free to explore the city. From there, Batman saves Catwoman from Two-Face in the local courthouse. After saving her, a sniper shot nearly hits Catwoman and Batman goes to investigate. He finds the source of the shot, which was a sniper remote controlled by the Joker from a close-by bell tower. Batman tracks the sniper shot back to the Sionis steel mill, hoping that he would find the Joker and also learn more about Protocol 10. Although he doesn't learn anything about Protocol 10, he does learn that the Joker is suffering from the side effects of the Titan formula that will eventually kill him. While at the mill, Batman is knocked out and captured. He's injected with Joker's blood, therefore getting infected with the disease. Joker reveals that he has given his infected blood to hospitals around Gotham, pretty much forcing Batman to find the antidote. You seek out Mr. Freeze as he's been creating an antidote but soon realize he has been captured by the Penguin. Batman tracks them down to a museum and takes down not only the Penguin, but an imprisoned Solomon Grundy. After having been saved, Freeze reveals that the antidote cannot be created in its destabilized state. Batman immediately thinks of Raj al Ghul and his immortal properties. After tracking down one of the ninjas of the League of Assassins back to their lair, he confronts Talia al Ghul. A very weak and dying Batman asks to join the League in order to meet with Raj al Ghul and get some of his blood. In order for anyone to join the League, they must complete the Demon Trials. Before starting the trials, Batman drinks from a chalice which not only transports him to the Demon Trials, but also provides him with a boost to his health to prolong the sickness. After completion of the trials, Batman approaches a very weak Raj al Ghul who asks for Batman to kill him and take control of the League. Batman declines and only asks for a blood sample. Raj says that he must take his place or die. Batman fights Raj in the Lazarus Pit. After Batman wins the fight, Raj threatens his daughter Talia with a knife. Batman stuns him with a controlled batarang and saves Talia. Once the blood sample is collected, Batman returns to Freeze. After completing the antidote, Freeze admits that the Joker has his wife Nora and that Batman cannot receive the antidote. From there, Batman fights Mr. Freeze in one of my favorite boss fights, which I'll touch on later. After beating Freeze, the safe in which the antidote was placed is breached by Harley Quinn and the one remaining vial is stolen. Batman returns to the Joker, who appears to be cured, and they begin to fight. While fighting, Protocol 10 is activated and is revealed to be Strange's plan to wipe out crime from Gotham. This plan includes getting rid of all criminal aspects of Gotham through missile strikes. This explains why the arrest of people like Jack Ryder and Bruce Wayne took place, because they are a threat to Strange's plan. One of the missiles strikes the mill and rubble covers Batman, but before Joker kills him, Talia offers Joker immortality if he would spare him. Joker accepts. After being abandoned by them, Catwoman helps Batman escape. After being convinced by Alfred to stop Protocol 10, Batman infiltrates the Wonder Tower where Doctor Strange is controlling it all. While making his way up to Strange, Batman takes out groups of enemies standing in his way. After disabling Protocol 10, Raj al Ghul reveals himself to be the mastermind behind the whole thing and stabs Strange since he has failed him. While he is seconds from death, Strange activates Protocol 11, which blows up the entire Wonder Tower, forcing both Batman and Raj to jump. As he is falling to the ground, Raj takes his own life as he has failed himself. After being contacted by Joker, Batman arrives at the Monarch Theater where Talia is being held hostage. Talia breaks free and stabs Joker, but it is revealed that the stabbed Joker is a morphed Clayface. Talia admits she stole the cure from Harley Quinn but is killed shortly after by the real Joker, who is still riddled with red blotches and marks on his skin. During the fight with Clayface, Joker destroys the floor, revealing the Lazarus Pit, which he plans to use to gain immortality. Once Clayface is defeated, Batman receives and takes some of the antidote while destroying the Lazarus Pit. An attack by Joker from behind causes Batman to drop the rest of the antidote to shatter to the floor. With the Joker on his last breaths, Batman admits to him that he would have saved him. What you would think would be a satisfying ending with your arch nemesis dead, it actually turns out to be a bit depressing. With the dead Joker in his arms, Batman walks out the front door of the mill, through groups of henchmen and finally to the cops arriving at the scene, where Batman places Joker on the hood of a cop car to end the game. I know it might not sound very sad, but after playing through Asylum and Now City, you have this weird kind of bond with the Joker. I think it's best said through this clip in The Dark Knight.
Then why do you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No, you complete me.
Although they are different timelines and forms of media, their relationship is still the same. The unique and highly praised free flow system carries over from Asylum. With the system refined just a little, it feels a lot more responsive and sharp. This is one of Rocksteady's if it ain't broke don't fix it moments, and I think it's appropriate in this situation. If you count upgrades as changing the fighting system, then technically it was changed with a few more unlockables, but the base mechanics were not changed at all. A small issue I have with fighting in City as well as Asylum is that sometimes when fighting in big crowds, some inputs just don't seem to register. It happens maybe once every 4 or 5 fights, but it is annoying when it happens because I tend to rack up higher multiplier streaks and getting hit instantly breaks it. It's very upsetting since it is completely out of my control when it happens. I don't know if it is something that I'm doing that makes it happen or if it's the number of enemies I'm fighting, but it is an issue that I and many others wish would have been fixed. But hey, I'm not planning on an update to this 11-year-old game anytime soon. I enjoyed upgrades in this game much more than Asylum because they seemed much more necessary and exciting than previously. I played through Asylum on normal and City on hard, which could have very well been the reason the upgrades didn't seem necessary last time, but now they seem much more important. Although a few seemingly unnecessary upgrades still exist, the majority of them feel like they have an actual purpose in this game. New gadgets include smoke pellets to avoid gunfire, a disruptor that jams enemy guns, a freeze cluster that temporarily freezes enemies, and a remote electrical charge which can electrocute enemies and be used in some puzzles. One vital upgrade that was added to this game was the grapple booster, which gives you a little bit more power when grappling. So when approaching a ledge, instead of grabbing onto it, you get launched up maybe 10 feet so you can keep momentum. The health system was also upgraded, so instead of a single health bar tree, armor is split into ballistic armor for gun damage reduction and combat armor for physical damage reduction. A few combat upgrades were introduced, but nothing too drastic. With so many new gadgets and upgrades, the game is much more customizable, especially in stealth sections. The contrast between boss fights in Asylum and City is day and night. Boss fights in Asylum were very much lacking, especially the final Titan Joker fight, which I talked about in depth in my review on Asylum, so feel free to check it out. Rocksteady did a complete 180 with bosses in City, including one of my new favorite boss fights of all time, Mr. Freeze. The first real boss fight in City is with Penguin and Solomon Grundy. The Penguin is holding 2 cops hostage in the Iceberg Lounge in the museum, and if you approach them, he shoots you with a freeze gun stolen from Mr. Freeze. To avoid this, you find a disruptor that not only jams Freeze's gun, but any other gun in the game used by basic enemies. Once you jam the gun and punch the Penguin, he blows up the floor, which sends you down to a fight with Solomon Grundy. Solomon is an extremely cool looking boss, with some pretty interesting lore. Although the fight wasn't the hardest, it was different from your average spam, punch, and stun button until the boss dies kind of fight. The key to winning this fight is blowing up the electric pillars which are charging Grundy. He gets stunned and you have time to attack. Pretty basic fight, but the visuals make up for it. The next fight is Raj Al Ghul, which is a very fun and somewhat challenging fight. Before fighting Raj, you go through the demon trials, which are pretty much just glorified gliding challenges. The actual fighting takes place in the Lazarus Pit, which is where Raj draws his eternal life from. A lot of the fight is dodging his attacks, which includes sword attacks and ninja stars. When fighting, Raj has a ring of ninjas spinning around him with a few open slots. The way to stun him is by shooting an electric charge through that opening. When that happens, all the ninjas jump up and attack you at once. You must click the counter button once for each of the ninjas before they hit you. Fight the group of ninjas, and once defeated, phase 1 is repeated, but now there is a smaller gap between the ninjas. Keep repeating until finally Raj lunges at you, and the counter prompt shows up. Keep spamming until Batman finally headbutts Raj, and that's the fight. It's nice to see a fight that gets progressively harder as you go, instead of a set difficulty throughout the entire fight. Next is my favorite fight of the game, Mr. Freeze. The fight is so creative and unique that it is easily one of my top 5 video game bosses of all time. Instead of attacking head-on, you must be stealthy throughout the arena and look for ways to attack Freeze, such as jumping up through the vents in the ground or attacking from above by jumping over a railing. But the interesting part is that once you use these attacks, Freeze goes around the room and makes it impossible to do it again. Altogether, I think there are around 12 ways to damage Freeze. I won't spoil them all because I think half the fun is discovering them on your own. I don't know if all 12 are necessary to win, but it does take a good amount of creativity and sneaking around to beat him. Right now explaining it doesn't sound very interesting, but when first approaching the fight, it is a breath of fresh air. The fight between Joker isn't really a boss fight, but more of a fight with a large group of enemies. He doesn't really pose a threat, but you do fight mini bosses such as Titan and Mr. Hammer. The final fight with Clayface is also a pretty new and interesting idea. What's different with this fight is that you receive a sword to fight with, which from what I know is the only weapon that Batman receives in this game other than his gadgets. The way to defeat him is by throwing freeze grenades when his mouth is open. This causes him to be vulnerable for a few seconds. When he is frozen, you can go to town with the sword and eventually win the fight. A lot simpler than other encounters in this game, but the addition of the sword really makes it memorable. Arkham City is a perfect example of a sequel, and for me personally is better than Asylum, which in the end is really the goal of a sequel, to be better than the last installation. Great additions and graphical improvements make the game a great jump from Asylum. Components such as the story and improved fighting mechanics really make City worth the money even today. Although some parts are showing their age, like graphics and map size compared to games today, I would still highly recommend playing through City if you haven't.